Hey folks, Mike Shea here from slyflourish.com and twitter.com/slyflourish. Welcome to today's episode. You'd think one day I'd figure out how to mute the other channel. Welcome to another episode of Lazy Dungeon Master Preparation, wherein I spend an hour chatting with folks about D&D and preparing for my Tomb of Annihilation game, currently running Tomb of Annihilation, using the steps of Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, the book that I kickstarted earlier this year and that will be published later this year, likely middle of fall-ish. If you backed it and you want a sneak preview of what's in the book, this is a great way to get a sneak preview. I actually have a copy of the book on hand. You can see it right there. And I flip through it while we're going through prep. And if you are, so I'm on Twitch right now. You might be seeing this on YouTube. If you are on Twitch and you are following, please say hello in the chat room and we'll chat about Dungeons and Dragons while we do some game preparation. So in previous couple of bookkeeping things, who made the most common questions? Geekly Instinct is now hosting you to 7 viewers. Oh, I'm being hosted by someone else. That's very nice. Couple of housekeeping things. People wonder where I got the overlay. The overlay is made by the awesome Eric Vulgaris. He was introduced to me by my friend Grant Ellis and made the overlay, and I love it. And what text editor am I using? I am using Sublime, and I am marking it up using Markdown. You can Google both of those things if you don't know what they are, and if you are at all curious. As I've done in previous sessions, we will talk a little bit about what happened in the last session. And we'll look at, in particular, people have been interested in which secrets and clues come up in previous sections. So I have loaded the game notes from last session, and we'll quickly run through them. So last session, the characters were in Wyrmheart Mine. They began the session after they had slaughtered a whole ton of kobolds and a couple of salamanders. And they were getting ready to go into the main salamander. There's a salamander warlock thing. I think he was a priest. I think I made him a fire priest that had torn open a rift to the elemental plane of fire and was going to use it to create an avatar of Imix out of the dragon named Tinder. Tinder did not know that he would be destroyed during this process. That was known to the characters and known to some of the, I think it was in a book. They found an old book that showed the ritual and said, wow, this ritual is going to destroy this dragon. I wonder if he knows this. So that was an opportunity for some role-playing, which ended up coming into effect. And people seemed happy about that. You always think, like, whenever there's a red dragon, you should fight a red dragon. But sometimes a good stern conversation, a good crucial conversation with a red dragon can be as fun as a fight. Hello, non-lethal snipes. It is good. Thank you for coming, and glad you could catch me live as well. I have two companions with me today. They will probably get involved here in the conversation. Right now, they're running around on a plastic bag, which they seem to be really enjoying. So they fought all these kobolds. They killed the kobolds, and they were going to head in. I started this session as I mentioned, I was going to start it with a kobold janitor named Wyrmbait, who rolls in with this big cart full of shackles and bits of iron that they need for their ritual. And he's looking around and looking at them. And they had a nice conversation with him. And they shot him in the arm, so it looked like he fought, so that if he got caught, he could claim that he fought with everyone else. And then they went in and fought Tinder and his salamanders, which was a really rough fight. Tinder's a priest, and he at one point filled the entire room with what's it called? Not spirit weapon, but the other one, spectral guardians or whatever it is, spirit guardians. Only it was all fire and is just burning everybody up, and people thought that was terrible. And then they hit him and broke his concentration, and that was very helpful. It's kind of cool as a DM. Normally, it's very disappointing when your monster has concentration broken. But to think of it as a puzzle that, like, they need to break concentration or they're all going to get destroyed. That was pretty fun. Like, I wanted them to break concentration, because if not, this battle was going to go really poorly. That's different. That was a different attitude on my part then. I sure hope they don't break concentration so my guys can do some cool stuff. In exchange of that, though, I extended the range of spirit guardians to the entire range of the room, so nobody was able to step outside of it. mostly because we're running more kind of theater of the mindy, and I wanted everyone to feel the pain. We have a lot of ranged attackers in my group, so I kind of want to make sure they feel the threat as much as everybody. So in particular, let's take a look at the secrets and clues that I had written out and see which ones of them, I'll put a little X next to which ones of them actually took place. Ember plans to transform Tinder, that one did. The transformation will kill Tinder, that came up. Tinder doesn't know it'll kill her, that also came up. Dwarves cause the rift. I don't think that came up. I had a very fun roleplay scene with the dwarves. So there were dwarven specters that were in this cave, and as the group heard about them from the kobolds, who were like, "Oh, don't go in there. That's insane. They're dwarf specters, and they'll drain your life. And by the way, if your life is drained while the soulmonger is chewing up souls, your life will be permanently drained. You don't get it back." So everyone's like, "Oh my God, do we really want to go into specters?" Like, let's just take a peek. So they hear these like roaring and grumbling, and there's all this stuff, and like, what's going on in there? And they hear the clattering of bones, and they're like, "Uh-oh, this is bad." And the guy, like, one would roar out, and so they peek around, and then they see, and all the dwarves are cuddled around like they're chewing on something, like they're surrounding this thing, and then they see, and these pair of square bones go rolling across, and one of the dwarves goes, "Ah, shit! I rolled poorly again." And then it turns out they're all playing a dice game. But their dice kind of suck. So now they and then the dwarves are like, "Oh, everybody get your game faces on. We got visitors." And then they go, "We're evil specters." But really, they were like kind-hearted dwarves. And the party talked to them for a while and learned a little bit about what happened to Wyrmheart. Learned that they were betrayed by Sararak, that Sararak had come and kind of hired them to engineer and build stuff. And then he destroyed them, and their souls never left. And they're the lucky ones because they still have spectral forms at all. Everyone else was completely destroyed and eaten by the soulmonger. Uh-oh. I got a visitor coming. So that was a lot of fun. They enjoyed that. And then I think they left, and now they're on their way out. So let's see. Dwarves caused the rift. I can't remember if that came up or not. They did learn that the fire can empower objects with elemental fire, and they chose to make a wand of fireballs. So that'll be handy. Oh, the cats. These cats. I got cat issues. Sorry about the racket. Dwarves of Wyrmheart were captured and enslaved. Yes, much of the material Wyrmheart is used to build it. I don't know that came up. Sararak used a portal to connect Omu and Wyrmheart. That did not come up. Omu's sky is protected by hideous, powerful gargoyles. That did not come up. Kobolds help maintain Omu on behalf of the Rogue One. That did come up. The kobold did bring it up. So once again, looks like about 7 of the 10 secrets that I came up with came into play. It seems like the median, if you will, is roughly half. That whenever I write secrets down. A really interesting note, I forgot to send myself these notes. So I wrote all these notes up during this prep session last week and then didn't do anything with them. And I went to the game with nothing except a book and ran it. And I remembered a lot of this stuff. So the idea of like syncing this stuff into your brain while you're doing prep certainly works for me. And I've heard, that's a common thing, that writing things down helps people remember stuff. I don't think that's out of line. Oh, you should see these 2 cats are like climbing up on big plastic bins that I was using to store miniatures and leaping on each other. They're getting all kinds of shenanigans. How did you bring these secrets up to players? Cornash, that's a good question. Honestly, I don't remember. So a lot of these they got from the kobold that they had interrogated. Some of it they kind of already knew, and some of it they got from the dwarves. But the idea with secrets is that, and maybe you already know this, maybe you've already figured this out, but the secrets don't have context. I don't talk about where they discover them. I just come up with the secrets, and then during the game, I use them to help improvise discoveries. And I find that is a really powerful tool. That's actually probably the key. That's like the anchor of the Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master book. Is secrets and clues were not in the original Lazy Dungeon Master, but they were such a powerful tool that I found after 5 years of kind of using that technique, that I was like, I got to do something. And I wrote a whole big article on Sly Flourish about it, and then refined it, and then wrote Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master. And one of the big reasons I wrote that was because I didn't feel like Lazy Dungeon Master was complete because it didn't have that. So yeah, but the key to that secret is that you come up with these ideas. They're hard to improvise, so we come up with them now while we're chatting, and you insert them in your game wherever they make sense. So it could be an NPC, could be a dream. I love dream sequences. In my Wednesday game, the group actually fought the main boss. So Tomb of Annihilation, obviously if you're watching this, there's some spoilers, but I'm not going to spoil the actual full end of the adventure on this. But there's another big boss other than the obvious boss of Acererak. And my Wednesday group fought it as a dream sequence. They actually, it was the dream of an NPC that manifested into something that they actually had to fight and beat. And that gave me an opportunity to test out that boss and see what that would be like to run it for real. It's something I highly recommend for boss monsters, is give them a shot, give them a chance to fight it ahead of time, not just so they can see it, but so you can see it. I did this with Imrith. Imrith was the blue dragon instigator in Storm King's Thunder, and I had Imrith made clones of herself, or simulacrums of herself, and she attacked the party at least once, and I think in the final battle she actually had her and a simulacrum of her at the same time, so they had to fight 2 ancient blue dragons at the same time, which is great fun. But when you're 16th level, you know, that's like a typical fight. I don't know how I got on that. So let's take a look at today's game. One other little bit of housekeeping. I got 2 requests since I've been putting these up on YouTube. One is that I describe what part of the game. Oh, see the kitty? There's a kitty up there. I never knew that she went up there. So that is Precious is her name. And I didn't know she'd like to go up there, so I'm glad she does. The other one is named Pumpkin. Pumpkin is about twice the size of Precious, but I'm happy to have a cat on camera. I'm sure that will increase my viewership and follower count significantly. I should always have cats. It's the internet after all. So I've got one request that said, in the description of the video, make sure to mention which part of Tomb of Annihilation I'm actually preparing for. So I started doing that. I actually went back through a lot of the old ones and added that in so that people could say like, so you're preparing for scene X. Now, of course, my own game goes off the rails from the main game, so sometimes I'm talking about, like, hey, vampire pirates, and people are like, where the hell are the vampire pirates? There's no vampire pirates in Tomb of Annihilation. And then you say, oh, they are in mine. So, you know, there's lots of times where a scene might be different than what's in the book, but still people want to know generally where we are, so I did that. The other one, which is a really good suggestion, was that I take these game notes and add them to the description in the video. So, Pumpkin might be climbing up. You might be seeing Pumpkin here in a minute. She's coming. He's coming. So somebody had the idea, hey, why don't you post your game notes in the description on the video? So I started doing that. I actually went back through about the past 6 or 7 videos and added it in there. So, there you can see Pumpkin. There's going to be a big fight between, behind me. They wrestle all the time, these two. They wrestle and they fight and then they sleep on top of one another. So I don't know. And you'd think, Pumpkin is the bigger one, the one that's currently lying on top of Precious. But you'd think that because Pumpkin is twice as big, that Pumpkin would always be beating the crap out of Precious. And we worry about that. But then sometimes Pumpkin's just hanging out and Precious goes and darts after him and punches him. So we don't have too much sympathy. But yeah, they're cool. We've had about a week. We're fostering them. So they'll be here for about another week. And I think then they'll go find forever homes, as they say. So where's the game going to start today? So they just left, they exited Wyrmheart Mine, and they're just on their way out to Omu. And this is a good opportunity to kind of remind them that sort of terrible things are taking place. So I think we will have, there's a great scene in Lord of the Rings in Return of the King where Gandalf and Pippin, is it? I think it's Pippin, right? They're out on the balcony and they're hanging out and they're looking out over Mordor, and then all of a sudden there's this huge beam of light that fires off into the air, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And that was because the Witch King is coming out. I think we need a scene like that. So, it might be fun to have them see like a beam of soul energy, as though whatever is down in the depths of the tomb is leveling up. So I think they already fought like piles of undead things, but I wonder if it's not time for more undead. So huge green beam pierces in the air over Omu. That's, and then that lasts for, an hour and then disappears. I could throw them into a fight, like, while that's going on. Maybe they're attacked by ghouls or some other stuff, but I don't know. They had a hard go. I think it might be time for a start that isn't a big fight. They have maybe the kobold, their kobold Wyrmbait. That the being under the tomb stirs, that it's gaining power. So I think that's just kind of so one of the things I like to do with the strong start is I like to kind of just shake things up. What's happening in the world besides the characters? What's something they'll see and go, oh wow, the world is moving on, things are happening. Are you still I can't read the name, it's so light. Demos Thorn. Are you still in the Nova area? Do you DM for interested but never played people? I'm kind of bad about that. I have 2 groups, and both of them are long-time groups. One of them is at a public play. We play at the local game shop in Fairfax. And then I have my home group. I haven't really run for new people. We have a lot of DMs here, and one thing I'd recommend on Warhorn, if you look for I think it was the Gamer Syndicate, but I don't know if they call it that anymore. There's the Nova D&D group, is pretty popular and has a lot of folks in there, and there's a lot of D&D games. So I would recommend popping on there. I think on Saturdays and like Wednesdays they have games, and that's a good place, I think, for folks to jump in. A fella named Martin runs it. I know him, and he kind of organizes the games for it. And and there's a lot of other games in the Nova area. But no, so the answer is no, I really don't. I should. If I was a better person, I would. But I'm kind of so busy with the 2 games that I've been running a long time and all of this other D&D stuff that I do that I haven't really run for new people that often. And I should, because I would learn a lot more. So I'll add that onto my enormous to-do list. See the cats fighting up there? Yeah, they're pretty awesome, those 2. I'm glad this is an entertaining. This is like a Barnum and Bailey. I got like a 2-ring circus. You can watch me prep D&D, and you can watch 2 cats fight at the same time. I should have a third thing going on. I don't know what that would be. So at the start of this game, they're ready to go right back to exploration again. So what scenes might take place? I am thinking of... So Wreck of the Star Goddess is one scene that could take place. It's on the way. They've seen it already. And the neat thing about that would be that I think the Wreck of the Star Goddess is a good way to introduce new characters. I've started, so I don't follow my own advice as much as I should, and I haven't fully read Tomb of Annihilation. And in particular, I had skimmed but never really read the depths of the Tomb of the Nine Gods itself. And holy cow, that dungeon is mean. Really bad stuff, and lots of times where it says, the character, a character who fails this save takes 44 damage. If this reduces the character to 0, they are turned to dust. And you're like, wow, and that's all over. Characters are... You guys, take care of yourselves. Don't make me break you up. I'm gonna go get you. You old monster. Look at people on Twitch. I'm a mean one. This one's a troublemaker. All right. I should probably not put him on the desk. I keep calling it her. Sorry, cat break. So we're going to need a lot of player characters because a lot of them are going to die. And the Wreck of the Star Goddess is a good way to say, like, there are a bunch of mercenaries on board. And it's an opportunity to kind of say, like, maybe these are the guys that will kind of move their way into Omu so that the players have a stable of characters to send into the fray into the tomb. So Jason Shamblin says, based on the inspiration for TOA, disintegration seems like a given. You would think, actually, that's not even disintegration. It's a whole, like, you get crushed under big rocks and you're turned to dust. Like, if lots of things take you to 0 and just kill you outright, and it's not necrotic damage, which is what we would expect. Grant Ellis is in the house. Hello, Grant. I hope you're having a good day. I saw your picture on Twitter, and you look awesome. You look far better than me in my Hawaiian shirt. So, Wreck of the Starcross. But the other one that I wanted to do, which isn't in place, is the Goblin. That Goblin place. What's it called? Yell-Yark. Yeah, so I think it's time for Yell-Yark to be a thing. Kitties. That kitty came back on the desk. Yell-Yark is the Batari Goblin city that can be catapulted around. So it can really be anywhere. And I think they're going to run into some Batari. I think it might be fun to run into some Batari Goblin city. So that could be a fun one. And that means they might get ambushed by some, they might be scouted by, and maybe the goblins, maybe it's time for a Tyrannosaurus, zombie Tyrannosaurus. What do you think? Time for a zombie Tyrannosaurus? So it could be that like a goblin kind of comes in and blows a horn and then dives away and zombie Tyrannosauruses come. I think it'd be a good time. Precious is wandering around. DM Samuel. Hey Sam, is DM Samuel? Is that Sam Dillon? DM Samuel, or is there another DM Samuel? You actually ran this, so I'm always curious. Yeah, I actually had them run into the. Oh, it's so good to see you. Or see you online anyway. I did already have them see a zombie Tyrannosaurus, but they were pretty low level and they ran, so it might be time for them to fight one. So I think that I like the idea that Batari goblins will sort of set them up, kind of place rotted meat around their place, and they'll smell it and be like, what's that? And they might see it, and then the goblins will blow like a horn, and that brings the zombie T-Rex. So that's another idea. Jason Shamblin says, what about a zombie T-Rex assault on Yell-Yark? Sam, did you run Yell-Yark? And if so, I'd love to see any tips that you have for running it. Now I got the other kitty. Here's Precious. Oh, Precious. Precious is just a little gal. She's still pretty young. So we're hanging on to them since they came from another shelter, and we have to kind of isolate them from the other cats. This one over here has a, sneezes a bunch. Not really a cold exactly, but some kind of sniffle. So we want to make sure they get well rid of that before we go into general population at the shelter. So those I think are going to be the main scenes. That's enough to cover the 3 hours that I run the game. And but they could always enter Omu. Sam, another question: How many characters died when you ran them through the tomb? Like when I'm reading the text for the Tomb of the Nine Gods, one of the things that's jumping way out at me is like many times there isn't a solution to the puzzle other than figuring out how best to get your ass kicked. And I'm thinking about some of the tombs where it's like you have to crawl inside of a coffin. You have to crawl inside of a coffin and turn the key, and when it does, it seals the coffin up and then blasts you with force damage. It seems like the traps, and it makes sense, right? That the traps are not, and the tricks are not like there's a solution to this. It's like you need to even figure out how you're going to, get your ass beat. And which is kind of fun, but it's like, man, that's a lot of low beats. Here's the kitty again. She's like, I want to be on Twitch. I'm an important kitty. If I put you up on the thing, though, you're just going to get into a fight. Yeah, so my wife brought up, I mentioned it to my wife that it seems like there's lots of, not quite save or dies, but like, 0 hit points equals death. And she said, yeah, we're going to be using a lot of death wards. And, death ward seems like a pretty powerful way to handle it. Death ward is one of the few death-based spells that actually, I think we're going to have some more kitty drama here in a minute. I'm not sure. Maybe not. 3 PC deaths in the adventure, 2 in the tomb itself. Did you have them bring in new characters? Like what I'm going to do is, I think, make sure that the groups have stables of PCs that are near Omu that they can sort of bring in and join up. But the book even offers some solutions that there's like, the other adventurers who sort of got stuck in the tomb and can come out. So I told all of my players on both groups, you guys better have spare characters. All right, so now we come to... I love that I don't use common bullet schemes for my bullets in Markdown, and I'm OCD, so I got to fix that now. Sorry, OCD. So what secrets and clues can the characters uncover? So a big one that is clear to me for reading the Tomb of the Nine Gods section is that the tomb, like nothing else in Chult, so these are some big juicy secrets about the tomb itself. Let them bring new ones in. One was about to be cut up and turned into a tomb guardian by the dwarves. They rescued... Oh, that's very cool. Oh, I love that. So DM Samuel says that he had a character who was taken by the tomb guardians and turned into a... Or was going to be ripped up, and he was captured by the dwarves. They have these dwarven wights that go around. And turned into a tomb guardian, but they rescued him. That is awesome. That's a really cool... That's cool. So DM Samuel says, turns out he was a bard. Turns out he was a bard that had been following the party, fangirling the druid, and got captured. So the fact that the druid ended up rescuing her was awesome. I love when little stories come out. That's what all these adventures are for, right? They're frameworks for stories that occur. And that sounds like the perfect story. Extra characters seem like a good move. Would you have them meet some of them ahead of time? Maybe a couple backup PCs or prisoners of the Yellyark? Yeah, Jason, that's a fine way to go. That's kind of what I was thinking. There was a question of like, they're probably 6th or 7th level. What the hell is a 7th level character doing captured by Yellyark guys? But you never know. And that's why I thought like having them on the Star Goddess made sense. Because the Star Goddess looks like a pretty good ship, and they could be, oh yeah, we got shredded by gargoyles. Oh, that's one. So the air. By the way, Sam, you would be proud of me. Yesterday, I haven't counted them. I really ought to. But I have probably 7 gallons of miniatures that I culled from my miniatures collection. It's a far cry from... I know, I can only count it in gallons, and that's only because I have them fitting into gallon-sized Ziploc bags. And I have about 7 gallon-sized Ziploc bags worth of minis that I culled from my main collection. So my main collection is probably 2/3 of what it was. But I'm still a far cry from 0. But I reorganized them, and I'm much happier with the organization. I think it'll be easier for me to find stuff. And I could never get rid of the minis that I've got. I love them. I look at some of them and I'm like, God, I love this mini. One of the ones that I use all the time, it's a Shardarkai assassin mini. And it's a Shardarkai that's got 2 of the like fist blades. I forget what they're called. And I use them for like assassins all the time. I use them for vampires. I use them for assassins. I use them for anything. They could be Gith. They could be Shardarkai. They could be, vampires. They could be all kinds of things. So I've got about 6 of them, and I just use them all over the place. So it's funny because like I could probably strip my set down to about 100 minis. Oh, we're gonna get in a big fight. Look at the fight about to occur. And see, for the record, Pumpkin, the big one, was up there chilling out, and now Precious is the one that came up there. And now they're going to get in a big spat. But they're just playing. Here it goes. Here it starts. It's usually a paw in the face, and then it's bunny kicking and all kinds of madness. I always like to play the Conan the Barbarian theme song whenever the two of them get into a fight, but my wife didn't think that was very funny. Air above Omu is protected by horrible gargoyles. What else could they learn? Yeah, one thing that occurred to me, like when you read about Omu, and I read about Omu, is that there's like all the tricks for like getting the puzzle cubes in Omu, and those seem like easy. Like many of them, you could just fly in and grab it. Like I've got a character who can fly, so they could just fly in and grab the thing and leave. Like there's no, there's one where they have to like hop on these things, but there's nothing that says like there's an anti-flying mechanism, that's like they could just fly over that stuff. So a lot of the puzzle cubes are going to be really easy to get, and they're like, man, this is easy. And then they're going to go to the tomb and they're going to get their freaking asses kicked. So, the idea that the things that are outside the tomb and the things that are inside the tomb are nothing alike. And it's because, the tomb is an embodiment of a Sarawak's twisted mind. So lots of stuff about the tomb. Yeah, Stash Raven says they have 6 cats. They would just need to loop the Conan music indefinitely. Pretty much. We only get involved when one of them starts to complain. And then we just separate them. So lots of secrets today, but they're all pretty easy. And that's okay. Like, not every session has to have a ton of like crazy secrets. One thing I found is that I've been running Tomb of Annihilation long enough. I did the same thing with Storm King's Thunder. I just ran it forever. And I don't ever want to stop. I'm just going to keep running this adventure. And the characters are like leveling really slowly, and that's frustrating to them. And I'm running out of stuff to share because it's like, well, I want to keep it focused on Omu. So I've added a lot of stuff about, I had the whole thing about the Eshowdow. It was actually one of the players that brought the Eshowdow thing to my attention. This is the whole tribe called the Eshow. By the way, as an interesting note, they're Mesro, the tribe of Chultans who were in Mesro are known as Taxabi, I think, or Tabaxi, one of the two. And they are not the cat people Tabaxi. There's actually 2 different types of Tabaxi, and one of them was the ones that fought the tribe of the Eshow, and I screwed them up and made them all cat people. But it kind of doesn't matter. That's the one where there was like a name collision inside D&D. What fantastic locations will they explore? In sessions past, I didn't worry about this too much because we had the book. But in this case, so obviously there's Yelyark. There's obviously... So those are 2 easy ones. But, what I like to do is sort of generate... So let's go over which window here. Sorry, too many windows. We'll go to this window, we'll open up a new tab, and we will go to Sly Flourishes Lost Monuments of Chult. And we will generate some random, this is my webpage here. I will add it to chat. And I will add it, where can I get fantastic random Chult monuments? This is a website I built. I have a random generator for Chult. And I have a random generator for fantastic monuments in general, and I made a customized one for Chult. And the idea is to sort of have these monuments that are sort of all over the place. Excavated necrotic tomb of Ubtao. So I actually had an interesting one before. That was like a lake. So what was the one? Let's see. I remember I grabbed it. Let's see. Sunken psychic pool of Ubtao. Cracked arcane tomb of Ubtao's champion. So I like this idea of like a psychic pool. I don't know about a necrotic tomb. Could be. Is it Death Knight time? Maybe it's time to fight a Death Knight. That'd be pretty badass. What level's a Death Knight? Is that too bad? I think they're pretty high CR, but I think if there's only one of them. Let's go. Go to D&D Beyond. And Death Knight. Death Knight is CR 17. Boy, that's pretty high, but I could lower its AC a little bit. The Hellfire Orb is 70 damage. Wow. That is badass. That could be a lot. 70 damage, I think, would wipe out many of the characters. I could just take the Hellfire Orb away, though. So I could kind of take a Death Knight and sort of, you know, knock it down a little bit as a solo and just have it swing around with longsword attacks and give it legendary longsword attacks. It's a little bit better than the Deathfire Orb, which does so much damage. 35 fire, 35 necrotic. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe a Death Knight. Monsters. Death Knight? Maybe. Pretty badass. Ghost Champion of Ubtao could be an NPC they meet. Do they have Chultan names? I think they have Chultan names. Open up some other windows here. Oh, I thought for sure that in the adventure there was some Chultan names. That might be in the intro. Oh, kitties. Getting all fired up. See, now I gotta... Rescue a kitty. Cats are getting fired up. Too fired up. Hi, Mom. My mom is in chat. Everyone say hello to my mom. She came for the kitties, I'm pretty sure. I'm looking for names, and I can't find any names. I thought for sure there was like a Chultan name generator in here. Chultan's... Oh, wait, I think I'm getting there. Chultan names! We are going to make the Death Knight a female. Nyali. Ghost Champion of Ubtao. Nyali. Everyone says hello to my mom. Mom flourish. So what else do we have? Well, of course we've got Batari goblins. So I'll give you a secret, because we're here on live internet talking about secrets. If you can't tell, the bulk of the prep is the secrets. Like, that's the hardest part. The strong start is important, and that takes a little bit of thought. The secrets and clues takes the most thought, and a lot of this other stuff I just sort of fill in as I go. One thing about okay, so magic items, like, they already have enough. I just gave them a crazy wand of fire. So, well, I think we're gonna give like a holy longsword though. One of those war clubs. And I think it'll be pseudo-intelligent, and I think he's going to have to prove himself, but I think in the end it could become a, what's it called? A Holy Avenger. I forget what the war clubs are called. Somebody on chat. What is the name of the Yukla? Is that what they're called? Yekla War Club. Holy Yekla War Club. A Holy Avenger War Club. How badass is that? Oh, wrong bullets. Oh. Gods. Oh, God, I'm putting them on the wrong side. Thank you for noticing that. I would have noticed it later and then had to come back and fix it, so I'm glad now I got it. So, with a session like this, and we're also going to do some, you know, text travel. With a game like this, it is pretty interesting how it goes. It's more open-ended. I have some things that I want to throw, but unlike the past session where I knew where things were headed, this one I kind of don't. So I just want to make sure I've got stuff prepared, but I don't really need a ton. I forgot. So I've also forgot the most important thing, which is reviewing the characters. I need to ask Smoke about their backstory. Smoke is a Tabaxi Ranger rogue. And I really don't know anything about Smoke, so I need to know more. Gabriel Tharmond is a fun one because it's in the body of Gabriel with the soul of Tharmond. Punchy, who wants to fly. What else? I want to spend a little bit more time understanding these characters. Warryn wants to be the biggest beast in the world and just got polymorph and now can. Ogechi. I've done a lot with Ogechi and the Eshowdow. And Huitzillin and maybe more. Particularly if they find the Ubtao, a tomb of a champion of Ubtao, that will be that might say like what made you become a champion of Ubtao? Like how did that occur? So that are my note. Those are my notes for. I'll just put a bullet there just so I've got a bullet because now everything's got bullets. I'm not actually a fan of bullets, but in Markdown you kind of need to have a bullet because if you don't mark down, it won't put a character turn. So everything needs either a bullet or a double character turn because that's the way paragraphs work. Or you do a line break, and who wants to do that? Let's take a quick look. I just want to read through Yell Yark. You know, I've seen it, but so Yell Yark, Batari Goblins, Biting Ant Tribe, stylized wooden ant masks. So that's an important little note. Mark the perimeter. Ooh, so the party could run into a skull swarming in ants. Oh, that's sweet, huh? Skull swarming with ants. Isn't that creepy? We love creepy stuff. The big net, 40 goblins, including a goblin boss, 24 adult goblins. It's a lot of goblins. They can go on alert. Canoes. So this one has it on the side of a river. I can always put a river anywhere, so I'm not worried about these. Evil Twin Mason says, do you feel like you're getting faster at these? A little bit, but you know, it depends. Depends on how hard it is for me to come up with the secrets and clues. I don't know if you saw, but I was able to whip these secrets and clues out pretty quickly. And most of it was because like right before here, I read the first 2 levels of the Tomb of the Nine Gods, and I have all that in my head. So I was able to just kind of digest that. Which really, if you're ever having trouble figuring out what players can learn or what secrets to come up with, just go read a D&D book. Read the adventure if you're running an adventure, or read some monster text, and you'll usually come up with something. I'm writing a whole article right now about the importance of reading the D&D books, mostly because I failed to, right? Like I only read the monster manual like 6 months ago, and I've owned it for 2.5 years or 3 years. There's so many great hooks, and part of it is my own transition going from very mechanics focused to more trying to get more story focused. And a lot of it is like the important part of a monster manual is not the stat block for the monster, it's the text around it. what is it about the Aarakocra and their desire to get the Rod of Seven Parts? Why is that interesting? And how can that hook into the adventure? It's more interesting the fact that they are whatever they are, CR 1/2 flying monsters that attack for 7 points of damage. This is something I'm learning, right? And I just finished. I'm about 2/3 of the way through Mordenkainen's. I finished all the chapters about the various conflicts that occur, and we're now reading through. Michelle and I are reading through the monsters. Even though she's a player, she can read monster stuff, and it's not too, I don't know when I'm going to write these things. So yeah. So Stash says, I skimmed then referenced. I need to read more. Yeah. So that's what I did, right? I skimmed, I referenced, I got what I needed, and I went off. But I tell you, like actually sitting down and giving them a thorough read, really there's a benefit. Like Sam here, Sam, I don't think there's any piece of paper within 50 feet of him that he hasn't read all the way through. And it's clear if you ever see, Sam Dillon's reviews on these books, like on the Tome Show, you should go listen to Sam Dillon's reviews in these books, because he is way more thorough than certainly than I am when I read this stuff. And there's so much value to be gained from that. There's, really just reading, like, I mean, I don't even know. It's funny. So, I don't even know what all the monsters are inside of Tome of Foes, which you'd think like would be the first thing I'd check. And instead, no, I've read all about everything else. And I'll tell you, like the chapter about the Githyanki, the Githyanki Githzeri, just awesome. And that's stuff like I didn't really know. The stuff about demons and devils I knew, or I knew a lot about it. And it was certainly interesting to read. The stuff about the elves was really interesting. Their whole story is something that I did not, I don't even know how close it is to the way it used to be in the past, but it's pretty interesting now. Halflings and gnomes are characters I never really paid any attention to, so I read that. The dwarves, you kind of know. It's like, oh, they love building stuff, and they're very kind of art-focused and stubborn. Like, oh, I kind of knew that. So, and I forget, is there another conflict in there? And, demons, devils. Oh, yeah, elves and drow. So that's all kind of interesting stuff. But I haven't even read all the monsters because, I'm kind of interested in the lore more. Sam, of course, says that the elven, I'm assuming he's talking about the elven connection, the whole thing with Corellon. Corellon is this, elven god before they were even manifested into humanoid form. And he was wounded by Grumsh, or I say they, I'll go with they, them for Corellon. They were wounded by Grumsh, and every drop of blood that fell became one of the first elven gods. And that included many elven gods and Loth. And then part of the elven gods said we should just frolic around the multiverse, enjoying ourselves and having fun, and kind of remain sort of these ethereal creatures. And other elves said, no, there's a whole bunch of other gods, and we need to sort of get involved. And the person who was leading that second group of, hey, we elves are important and we need to have our place in the pantheon, was in fact Loth. And then Loth, when seeing that she was not winning over Corellon, tried to assassinate Corellon. And Corellon was so kind of incensed by this attempt that he threw all of the elves out of their homeworld, out of the that sort of, it's not even the Feywild, it's whatever the world is, Averon or something, Alanon. No, I don't remember. So he kind of threw them all out, and then the elves now are separate from their god, and they sort of return. So young elves have this deep connection to the whole elven history, but as they get older, it starts their connection to the elves starts to shrink, until they are sort of focused on their own lives, and they sort of lose that connection. I think that's a fantastic sort of sad thing about the elves, that from birth they're sort of connected to the elves, but as they get older, they start to lose that connection to to Corellon and to the larger elven, larger elven populace, or kind of the connection of the people through their souls and everything like that. So I made a character for my D&D Adventures League game that is a elf that's on that transition where she's sort of switched. She's young, and she is just starting to lose her connection. She actually saw a connection to Corellon in a moonwell on the Moonshays. Step Back History. Step Back History says, it's cool. Do you worry at all that these books that are a mix of lore, monster manual, character options leaves these books unfocused? I don't think so. I actually think these books are more focused than they would be if they were just a monster book, right? They could just make a monster manual too. They've done that forever. And it's just, hey, here's more monsters. Like the Fiend Folio doesn't have any focus, right? But like Volo's guide had a very clear focus in my mind. It was that sort of low to mid-tier sets of monsters that included like aberrations, including mind flayers and beholders. It included the orcs and gnolls, and it sort of had this deep focus on them. And then the monsters that were in the back of the book were focused on those areas. So I thought that now, so the truth is, like, if you look at certainly Volo's guide, that a lot of the monsters they focused on were the IP. The Wizards of the Coast IP monsters, beholders, mind flayers, and stuff like that. So certainly that came into it. But I do think that having these sort of longer chapters about particular types of monsters and then focusing on those monsters in the book itself has more focus than they would if they had a Monster Manual 2 and a Monster Manual 3. And I think the same is true with Mordenkainen's. That Mordenkainen's, when you look at the monsters, I'm reading through the monsters now, and they have like this very clear focus of demons and devils and Shadar-kai and like a lot of shadow creatures and connections to the drow and stuff like that. That they have a focus in these books. Now, like the focus of like, well, who's supposed to buy this book? Is this a player book or a DM's book? And if you want the extra cool races, that means a player has to buy it, even though they're really only interested in one section. I will say that with Mordenkainen's, if like you want to play one of the crazy new elves, you get a lot of backstory of elves that you wouldn't get otherwise. So again, if we're not so focused on the mechanics of like what it is to be an Eladrin, and we think about that whole elven lore section, I think that's really valuable. Step Back History says, I think I was more thinking about Xanathar's Guide. That book was awesome, but it was all over the place. That's kind of true. I sort of saw Xanathar's Guide as, it's like a mixture of a miniature player's handbook or PHB2 and an Unearthed Arcana, like a DMG with new stuff. And yeah, I can kind of see that. But on the other hand, it's like, well, that's a whole lot of stuff in Xanathar's Guide that's really good. Like it's got to be, I think they said it was the fastest selling D&D book of all recorded time for D&D. Like that book sold more quickly than any other D&D book as far back as they could go. And I don't know if that's in the TSR era or not. But I wouldn't be surprised. And I think the reason why is because both DMs and players were dying for the stuff that was in that book. Like I wanted it because I wanted those encounter building guidelines. And I wanted some of the other, I wanted like the Book of Names and the encounters. They have all those giant random encounter tables, really useful for a DM. And for players, obviously it's piles of new character options, which I think, players are dying for. There's an interesting problem that, Wizards is being very careful about how often they're releasing books like that. Like it's been almost 4 years, I think. It'll be 4 years this fall that 4th edition has been out. So what blows my mind is that we are closing in, I think in a month or two, 5th edition will have been out longer than all of 4th edition. Now, 4th edition had a pretty short run. But like I kind of, was super into D&D when 4th edition was out. And that felt like a long time. And it wasn't that long. And now it's been much longer. And so I think that they have been very careful about releasing too many books and not releasing too many books. And that I think I've certainly seen like, oh, it's just ridiculous. I'll see posts and stuff. Yeah. So DM Samuel, who researched this, Sam, the question is, so you're saying it was out 6 years, but I guess my question is, when did the player's handbook get released for 4th edition? And then when did the D&D Next playtest get released to the point where we could play it? Like Winter Fantasy, that first Winter Fantasy. So yeah, I think like from the time the playtest was in a player's hands, that to me was kind of the end of 4E. Like you could sort of count they had a few books. August 2008, I think you mean, not 2018 is when so the question is, when did the 5E playtest start? Not the playtest, but when did the playtest start, but when did they start doing D&D Next? And like I went to Winter Fantasy and ran it, and I think that's what I was counting for. And to me, I think that was like the 4-year mark. So there was 2 years during the playtest, but really there wasn't any I think the 4E stuff that was coming out was like whatever they had left in the chute. So I don't know if I really count that, because like I had stopped playing 4E by that time, because there was so many other new systems and the D&D Next stuff was out. So I guess you could argue 6 years, but I think most people have been saying 4. So my point is they only have one player book out. Like, do you know how many player books were out for 4th edition by this time? There was like 6. I mean, they had like 4 essentials books that came out by now, plus PHB 2. I think there was a PHB 3. There was the Dark Sun book. There was tons of player-driven books, and it bloated the system so much. By the end, there was like I looked at it, and there was tremendous amounts of feats and powers, and no one could keep track. And I started doing the core +1 idea, and that worked really well for me. Where I said like we're going to use heroes, the 2 essentials heroes books plus Heroes of Shadow, and we're going to do a Shadowfell campaign. And I got some gripes from my players. They're like, well, I really want to play a Battle Mind, and you're like, well, Battle Mind doesn't fit here, And for Dark Sun, we did like the 2 hero books plus the Dark Sun book. And it limited the player options, and that was a much more. I enjoyed that way more as a DM, because there wasn't all these crazy ass combinations that people had. I also stuck to like low level, like 1 to 10. My point is that I think it's really interesting that Wizards has been not releasing nearly as many books, and that seems to be really working. And I've seen complaints that are like, oh, the fact that they're not releasing books shows how poorly it's doing. And then Wizards is like, actually, we're selling more than we've ever sold. And by the way, we now have more. We doubled the amount of people playing D&D in the last 2 years. And you're like, okay, so the first people don't know what they're talking about. But it's frustrating because people are like, oh, I really want new stuff. I want new player stuff. Oh God, I'm already bored. And it's like, let's all just calm down. And again, I think it's that same focus on mechanics. I got to have new mechanics. How about try a different kind of character? Not in their mechanics. Just go play one of the druids that isn't a moon druid. Go try the Beast Ranger. Go try some of the stuff and have fun with the story. Don't worry so much about what their damage output is compared to a Shadow Monk. The last 4E encounter season was 2013. Yeah. Okay. So about 5 years. So maybe we're not quite there yet. But I guess the question is when the D&D Next playtest started, because that was like when everybody realized like, okay, there's a new version of D&D. And if you want new content for 5e rules or open enough, so that's the other thing. Step Back History says if you want content for 5e, there's lots of stuff, and that's what I'll say. If you need player options, man, Midgard and Kobold Press is just consistently knocking it out of the park, and they're running solid play-tested material. Really good stuff. And then there's the whole Xanathar's, like it came out right away. It was Xanathar's Guide to Everything Else on D&D, on the DM's Guild. And I think, so the big question I had for it was that play tested? Were the character options in there play tested? To me, that's the big determining thing about whether or not something is solid or not. And have people played it really? And did feedback come from the play testing? And if the answer is yeah, they play tested and stuff came back. Murder in Baldur's Gate came out in 2013. It was D&D Next and 4E together. Sam, you and I could quibble about it. I think the minute they kind of said like D&D Next is out, I was over in that. Like I played Murder at Baldur's Gate, and I played it using the 5th edition rules or the D&D Next rules. So this coffee is cold. I'm drinking cold coffee that's been around for 3 hours now. What was my point? So I guess we were talking about books and stuff like that. I'm pretty happy with the release schedule that they've got. And I'm, man, I saw a question on Facebook about like, when do you think 6th edition will come out? And lots of talk about that. And Murrells has said some stuff, and all of it is, if we make anything new, it will be backward compatible. I think I heard that. I don't know if it's a guarantee or not. And I really don't think they're thinking about it. 'Cause like 4th edition, pretty much within the first year, there were common complaints about that game that never got resolved. And when I think about 5th edition, the common complaints are solvable, and they're much smaller. So there's definitely some, issues with 4E or 5E, but none of them in my mind are nearly as debilitating as the stuff in 4E. And I loved 4E, so I'm not bashing it. Like I played 4 or 5 campaigns, and I played a full 1 to 30 campaign, and it was huge, and I loved it, and my friends and I had a great time. So I'm not complaining. I mean, I am complaining, but the point was there were definitely, big hairy bugs in 4E that never got resolved, and some of them were like the player's handbook was full of broken stuff, and they ratted the hell out of it, but it didn't really fix a lot of stuff. And they fixed a lot of it in Essentials, but by then it just wasn't that popular. I think D&D Essentials was great. What would I want to add? So, step back history, and I have to make this my last thing because I got to actually get ready to go to my game. What would I add to 6th edition? I every so often my wife and I will be out walking, and she's a big D&D nerd, and we talk about D&D stuff all the time. And and the answer is no, you should not do a 6th edition. But I always say, like, well, when Wizards of the Coast calls me up and says, hey, Mike, we need you to come out here and help us make 6th edition, what would I bring? Probably one of them would be, I really like the hit point limitations on spells. It's a nice balance. It's a nice balance act where, like, dominate monster works for monsters that are of a certain CR and lower based on what level of the spell you cast. I think that puts a refinement on things. But that's arguing, and I'm kind of breaking away from that. Like, the more I get to the story focus, the more I don't care if a guy gets dominated. Same with, like, Turn Undead. Like, Turn Undead has a low threshold where when monsters hit a certain level or less, they're just plain destroyed. I actually like that more than I like them running away. But I would also say, like, you can't turn monsters that have a challenge rating that's higher than your level or something like that, so that you can't go in and turn Death Knights. I don't know if you can turn Death Knights anyway. Do they have resistance? I don't know. There's a few spells that I would tweak. Wow, some people know me. Non-lethal Snipe says, I thought your answer would be remove counterspell, leave everything else. Maybe, yeah. I think putting a limitation on counterspell, like, you always have to roll to see if you counter the spell, rather than you get to automatically counter a spell that's a certain level. I think you want to make it painful for people to cast counterspell without getting rid of it. So the idea, like, well, I can roll counterspell, but I'm going to burn like a 3rd level slot, and I might fail on any spell I try to counter, means that you would be a lot less likely to use it. So yeah, things like that would be okay. I don't know. I had a list, but the reality is, who the hell am I? And why do my opinions on this matter? I like the game. I'm having a great time. I think there's a lot we can do with 5th, little tweaks here and there. One thing I would do definitely, and I gave this feedback to Mike Merles on Twitter, was asking for feedback about Mordenkainen's, and I gave it, which is, like, the monsters, the high CR monsters in Mordenkainen's, they're not hard enough in my opinion. And, like, a lot of the devils and demons, they should be doing double. They should have double the hit points and double the damage to be equal to the challenge rating they are. They'll just get destroyed. And it's like one of them, Huitzillin. I'll load this last one up before we go. Then I gotta go run. I want to be late for the game that I was preparing for. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Demon. Bestiary. See index below. Huitzillin. Right? So here, this guy's backstory. This guy's backstory is that he is the lieutenant of Mephistopheles. Where is it? Outside the Huitzillin has amassed enough power to challenge the Lord of Cania, right? But he's never wavered for his master. So Huitzillin, in theory, should be nearly as powerful as Mephistopheles, the guy who runs Cania. And you're like, wow, 200 hit points. 200. Two good fighters of 16th level can do 200 hit points in 2 rounds, in 2 attacks. Like, this guy's going to get demolished, right? 200 hit points is nothing. A challenge 21. So this should be 400 to start and higher if you go for the other one. Then the other thing is, like, the damage he does, right? Claw. So he's got how many attacks? Oh, I highlighted too much. 4 attacks: bite, claw, mace, and tail, right? So his bite is 15 and poison. The problem with poisoned is that stupid Hero's Feast gets rid of any poisoning, and which I think is a real problem. That'd be something I'd fix. There's a lot of things I'd tweak, like to just make a slight tweak to it. But really, we'll deal. So he bites and poison, 15 damage. What 16th level character cares about 15 points of damage? 10 poison damage, again, this could be negated the minute they have Hero's Feast. Claw is 17 damage. Mace is 15 damage, right? Tail is 19 damage. And legendaries, he can make an attack with his mace. So he can do more of these 15 damage attacks. 15 damage. But then, so we go Huitzillin, right? And he's a large fiend devil. And if you look at him, where's a picture of Huitzillin? That's a pit fiend, right? He's basically a pit fiend. So then let's go look up pit fiend, right? A pit fiend who's challenge 20, slightly lower. Let's look at his mace, right? His mace does 15 plus 21 fire damage. Now we're talking. So why is it that Huitzillin, who runs pit fiends, can't he borrow one of those? Why doesn't he do 21 fire damage? So I'd rather take a pit fiend and give him legendary actions, and he'll kick the... Oh, by the way, 300 hit points. Pit fiends have 150% of the hit points of Huitzillin. What's up with that? I don't get it. So I don't know if it's a bug. I don't know if the challenge rating thing was off, but this guy should be 400 hit points to start. So here's the deal. Like, you know, I'm bitching, of course, and I'm going to be late for my game. But the bitching I'm doing, like, this is all, unlike 4th edition. 4th edition, I spent, like, all of my time tweaking monsters to get them to the point where they could be a challenge. In 5th edition, double their hit points, double their damage, and, you know, everything is harder. So... some monsters are really out of line in terms of stats. High-level PCs do a lot of damage. Yeah. So I have a theory about why that's the case. Oh my God, I'm just gonna sit here and talk about D&D and miss my game. But now that I buy. The non-lethal snipe says Huitzillin is a classic middle manager, right? He's 70%, whatever math. You know, he's roughly 75% of the, or 70% of the value of, or 66% of the value of the people he manages. That's pretty true. I could buy that as a middle manager. I can attest that that's probably true. So I think the reason why the high challenge monsters are not as powerful is because I think they're basing it on the idea that you do not include magic items in challenge level for characters, and you do not include feats. And if you think about it, the way that a fighter would do that much damage is with power attack and a good magic weapon. And if you're designing monsters, like if the challenge rating on a monster goes up when you give it this damage resistance to non-magical weapons, but the reality is at this level, everyone's going to have a magic weapon. But I think of the design, when they design monsters, when they add that in, it automatically bumps their challenge level up. And I just don't think it's worthwhile. So I do feel like some of the monsters in Mordenkainen's in particular are underpowered. The nice thing is, as much as I complain, it's super easy to fix. Double their hit points, double their damage, and they're scarier in hell. You know, if Huitzillin had 400 hit points and did 30 damage with a mace and 30, you know, nearly 40 damage with a tail, you know, 38 damage with a tail, and, you know, whatever it is, math is hard, 34 damage with a claw, and then have it do acid damage with its bite instead of poison. You know, add the poison effect, but have it do acid damage. Now you're talking, right? Now it's really bad. So I have to run. Thank you guys very much. Sam, thank you for coming. Non-lethal snipes, I'm glad you were able to make it. Step back in history, thank you. Everybody that was able to come to the chat today, that's great. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching on YouTube. I will have this published to YouTube very shortly, and I will include my show notes, and I will include talking about it. So really appreciate it. Thank you all, my friends, and have a great day.